All right, hello everybody. Welcome back. We've got the next big event since the 5030 release and changed in deck sizes. And Sorcery Con seemed really cool. I caught a lot of the stream. It was really unfortunate I couldn't make it out, but I'll be out there next year. But here we get to dig into some numbers. So I'll go through the decks really quick, and then we'll go through averages of cards being played and what have you. The stuff I really enjoy. So number one deck here is Shrink the Frog. This is a copy that's by Tolstoy, but this is the number one list that was released by David by SorceryCon. So I won't talk too much about this. I have a plan to talk to Alexis and have an interview and talk to him about his deck. But the main game plan of this deck is to abuse shrinks, uh, polymorphs, and grapple shots and I guess degradation now to turn things into these 1/1s, zero frogs, and then attack them with battle mage and get card advantage that way. All your 1 mana, 2 mana spells turn into cantrips at that point, so you'll always have cards. But a really good solid minion base here. Lugboard Cat is a really good aggressive or well costed minion. Same thing with Castle Haunt. It's kind of sneaky. You can just play this wherever you want with some exceptions. And then Palbury Bats with Falconer is just a really good combo. And then Highland Princess to go get a lot of your 1 mana artifacts, a core if you need it, or a lot of the case probably is Ring of Morrigan, which is I'll let you in on a little secret. It's the most played Arthurian Legends card in Sorcery right now. So great job, Alexis. Can't wait to talk to you. Second place here, Turbo Redneck, is a Geomancer of not Mono Earth, a big mana Geomancer, where he's trying to get to 8, 9, 7 mana to really play a big boom boom every single turn. And the Highlands Clanman is really sneakily a really good card. It's 7 mana, yes, but if you can get up there and swing with a 5/5, you can do some damage. And then you have ties for this is if you're in heavy earth, this is just draw 3. I know it says sites, but then you just can draw spells the rest of the game, and then maybe you can do something with all the sites in hand. Common Sense is just a really good earth card, and Cave In and Berries for a lot of removal with Earthquake. So you can do a lot of removal, play a lot of big minions, and then win with Craterize. Craterize is a huge impactful card. The big standout of SorceryCon was Archmagio. Archmagio got 3 of the top 8 decks, which is really impressive for a brand new avatar. This is playing kind of the same game as Death Speaker, where you're replaying spells constantly. They're playing a lot of some discard outlets with Sisters Avalon, so you can discard a spell. So you're really you're not losing a card. You're only losing like 2/3 of a card. Changed because you're playing very little minions. Retain's Titan, Grandmaster Wizard, your big top end here. I guess winning with Craterize. You can double Craterize with Archmagio. So I'm pretty sure this kind of list is trying to control the early game and just keep doing 1-for-1 trades, but you're not really 1-for-1ing yourself here because you're gaining 1/3 of a card every single time you play a card. And then Feast for Crows was in the winning list as well. But Feast for Crows, when we get to the comparison to the top 8 versus general playfield, was a big card. Fourth place, Avatar of Air. I said Avatar of Air was going to be the deck to beat, and I still believe that. I think Avatar of Air is still a very strong avatar, but didn't see a whole lot of showing in top 8. Maybe that's just a meta call. It plays Ring of Morgan and trinkets for some profitable trades. Iron Shackles is an interesting one here. A lot of people just play, I guess, Cast the Exile, but also Chaos Twister. Sorry about that. Rolling Boulder is another big one for Avatar of Air because you have so much freedom of movement. Really interesting Avatar of Air list here. You're still being aggressive with a lot of 3/3 flyers. Headless Haunts, if you can attack once, you're really happy about that. Really good Avatar of Air list here. Nice job in top 4. Top 8. Fire from the Witch is going to be a really aggressive Witch build. I know Witch was going into this this event as like the big, maybe a little bit of a boogeyman, but I think Witch is an okay avatar. The fact you have to tap to do her ability means you're not developing your board, but it's still a very good aggressive shell with a lot of Highland Falconers for the Palaburi Bats or Scarabs. Playing Morgan Le Fay is the most efficient card draw we have right now. Monstrous Lion is a really good aggressive card, and then you pair this with a Warhorse. You can Monstrous Lion on a Warhorse and like just attack for 4, or it's 4 mana for a repeatable removal spell if it doesn't get removed. And then playing Trinkets. Trinkets are really, really good for that repeatable buff. But nice job on top 8. And then we have an Archmagio burn list. This is where the first Archmagio was more of a controlling, get to big mana, and win that way. This is like, I'm gonna kill you with Immolation or 3 fire bolts, because if you fire bolts and then you have one in the yard, you can do it again. So it's six damage for almost 1 1/3 cards, or 1 and what have you. Flame Wave is a huge card. It can win games. This was big in when Fury Road was popular. But Flame Wave is, if you can cast this twice, it feels really, really strong. Playing Morgan Le Fay for some card draw, Warhorse for some just aggressive minions. Hamlet's Ablaze. I didn't see as much land destruction as I thought I was going to see, but this list obviously is doing such thing. And then if you can mix Year the Blaze out, that's just GG at that point. But really cool at top 8 burn list. This is a really interesting sorceress list, I'll be honest. I think it's looking to abuse Hamlet. So these are a bunch of 1 mana, 2 mana ordinary cards, and then you just double draw on turn 2, turn 3, and just play more minions than you know what to do with. That's really, really cool. And then Pawn for more discounts, Windmill for color fixing. Yeah, I guess this is 4 color, isn't it? Very cool. Very cool, like, just poop out a bunch of little guys and just go for it. I love it. And then the third Archmagio list is, I think, more of a traditional, if you can say that, like control list. Archmagio, playing a lot of repeatable effects that are really good. So like double lightning bolts, or you can common sense for common sense, then have common sense, and then you can fill up your yard and use that as fuel, right? An Angel's Egg for sustain, or Ring of Morgan because you're casting multiple spells a turn is really good. And then Sisters of Avalon for discard. Grandmaster was to refill your hand, and hopefully, because you're casting things from your yard, you're still drawing spells. You can have a couple cards in your hand, like 4 or 5, and Nimbus Djinn on top of their head, and go from there. Really cool top 8. Some very interesting list. I think Archmagio is a really standout avatar in this event. But I'll let you on a little secret. Funeral Pyre. If you're in fire, 3 Funeral Pyres. It helps against Deathspeaker. It really helps against Archmagio. Play more Funeral Pyres. All right, and then we'll run through some top cards here. These are top 5 cards that they're not the most played, but the ones I thought that were most interesting. I will also, after this, go through more in depth with more just like an Excel document looking, but I will have all these documents in the description or linked to the Discord or something. So most played ordinary cards was Lightning Bolt, Common Sense, and Grapple Shot. These are all very staple cards from Alpha and Beta. And to explain these numbers up here, the left number, 54 or 62, is the percent of decks playing at least 1 copy. And then the second number after the dash is the number of copies played per deck as an average. So on average, the top 8 had 2 Lightning Bolts in their deck, whereas the general playfield had 3. So maybe you can glean some information there. Common Sense, 49, 38. But these are all very, I don't know, expected. Like Magic Missiles is just an air version of Firebolts, right? So it was played about the same percentage of the time as Firebolts. And then Hammer's the Blaze, definitely thought there was going to be more land destruction, but there wasn't. So there was only 12%, 15% of the playfield was playing Hammer's the Blaze. And then exceptionals. The standout here is Warhorse. Warhorse is a really, really good minion. It's a 2/2 charge, which baseline is really good. But then the free movement it has lets you reposition so well, and then just leaves a body behind. So it's a blink that leaves a body behind. Sometimes you want blinks that draw you a card, but Warhorse is really, really good. Cast to Exile, played in 38% of top decks, but only 14% of the general playfield. Cast to Exile is such a good removal spell. It's so efficient at what it does. Now, the minion does need to be on your site, which will happen just happenstancely, and then you can just say, nope, that goes away. Cast to Exile is just a really efficient removal spell in air. Top Redcrap Prowries, their downside of them dying can only really be taken advantage of by like Flame Collar. So in a lot of aggressive decks, you kind of, if you can't attack with this, if it gets disabled or held up for a turn, it kind of falls, and then you lose a minion. You spent three mana to have your guy die, and maybe he hasn't done any damage. So I think that's why we see a quarter of the playfield playing it generally, but in the top 8, only 12%. Gaia Hippogriffs in a quarter of the top 8 decks makes a lot of sense. Gaia Hippogriffs is just a really strong minion. And then towards Hammer Trinket, this quarter versus 30% is really about the same. But this is the exceptionals. And then elites. The top elites here are Earthquake, Angel's Egg, and Brother Knight. Brother Knight is a really interesting one here. But Earthquake is the best removal spell in Earth. Angel's Egg is a really strong sustain card, but we only saw one deck play Angel's Egg in the top 8. But Brother Knight, 20% of the general playfield, but no Brother Knight made it to the top 8. I think this is a indication that aggro wasn't as strong as a lot of people were thinking. Like, there was a lot of aggressive witch builds, there was a lot of aggressive sorcerer stuff, but people were playing very good controls and they were able to slow that aggressive attack down. Highland Falconer here. 17% in the general playfield and almost 40% in the top 8. Almost half of the decks in the top 8 played Highland Falconer. It's just a really good card. It has 1 threshold. It's 2 mana. You get 3 stats with it. It's really, really strong. And then I wanted to call out Arcane Barrage here. I know it says 40% of the top 8 played it, but also 40% of the top 8 were Archmagio builds. So maybe Archmagio is really strong, and Arcane Barrage is an indicator of that. All right, here, and the big kahunas with the uniques, the top uniques are the Ring of Morrigan. Top 8, 7 out of 8 decks played the Ring of Morrigan. 7 out of 8. It's just kind of wild. Browse, it's almost a tutor, so 50% of the top 8 played it. Morgan Le Fay is a really good card draw, which 30 versus 25%. It's really about the same. Another indication here that Boudica, that means that there wasn't a lot of aggressive decks in the top 8, but kind of interesting there. And then Feast for Crows is another one I want to call out. 40% of the top decks were playing Feast for Crows, but only 20% of the general playfield were. Feast for Crows, if you know the meta, if you know the cards, if you know what you lose to, or just name Grapple Shot if it's in the air, Feast for Crows is a really, really strong card. You'll see in the top, the semifinals of the Sorcery Con Constructed, Alexi's named Gaia Hippogriffs and got 2 cards for his one, just right out of the hand, just ripped him out of there. Feast for Crows is a huge card. All right, here, and we're going to start getting a little into the weeds with some stats and some breakdowns, but on the left here, we have the general population of the elemental construction of decks, and on the right is the top 8. We can see here that Air Earth Fire is very popular, Air Fire is very popular, even a lot of 4-color stuff was out there, and one of them made it to top 8. What I found really interesting here is that 7 out of the 10 decks in top 8 had some kind of air in them. Air's generic movement and value is a very strong splash color in a lot of decks, and with like lightning bolts and blinks. It's a really versatile elemental threshold. All right, and here we'll just go through the most popular cards by element. The most popular air stuff, it was Gothic Towers, which make a lot of sense, and Blinks. Blinks are 2 mana, draw a card, blink to a nearby location, or teleport to a nearby location, and it replaces itself. 2 mana for a free nearby movement is kind of the base rate what we have with Blink, and it's really, really strong. The repositioning you get is really, really good. Lightning Bolt is also up here. One that's did better in the top 8 versus the general population is... Where's Browse at? Uh-oh. Browse. 24 versus 50%. We can see here in the count played overall. So this is the total played. In the top 8 was 4. So 4 decks ran Browse in the top 8, while only a quarter of the decks played Browse in the general population. Browse is one of the best tutors you're going to get in the game. Go find something that's better than what you have in hand, and for only 1 mana, it's really, really strong. Color Out of Space being a really popular site for some fixing. The top 8 percentages get a little weird because if like 1 or 2 or people play a card, it gets to 40% really quickly, or 3 people. So the lower counts kind of mess with stuff. And then in this column is average played. So uniques, all the average is going to be 1, but where I think it's kind of cool to see is Grapple Shot. Both in the top 8 and top or general population, 3 was the normal play amount people played. I'm sure there was a lot of 2s and some 4s, but overall, 3 were played in most decks. Disenchant being up here, most people played 1 probably for a common sense target, which makes a lot of sense with the Ring of Morrigan and some other powerful artifacts in the game. All right, then moving on to Earth here, I've filtered out sites just for a little bit of a cleaner look. Common Sense being the most played Earth site Earth card makes a lot of sense. Earthquake is up here. Craterize being played in I think 3 decks, 2 Archmagios and a Geomancer. It's just a huge mana spell, so like that has to be a game plan of getting to the longer game. Root Spider being up here as a really popular one. This is just a house of a card. Gigantism overall was a very popular card, but you don't really see that in the top 8 a whole lot. Gigantism was played in 1 deck. Gigantism is a hugely swingy card, but a lot of the times Gigantism will rot in hand. It's 4 mana to deal a lot of damage, but sometimes board presence is much more important than just hitting for 6. Another popular minion here overall was Pudge Butcher. Pudge Butcher, if it goes unanswered, will win you the game, but a lot of good players are really good at positioning so they can get out of the way of Pudge Butcher. But Pudge Butcher is kind of a really big answerable minion that you need to deal with. Pudge Butcher overall in the top 8 wasn't played just because of the previous reasonings. You can play around it, you can deal with it, you can bury it. There's a lot of ways to deal with a Pudge Butcher, but it gets a lot of people, so I think that's why it's played in a lot of the general play field. I'm not saying it's a bad card, just it can be answered efficiently. And if you don't have blinks or extra movement, it's 4 mana to do nothing sometimes, so it doesn't feel great. All right, here in Fire, we've got Violent, which is just one of the most efficient minions you can play. In the top 8, decks that played Violent, I guess, wanted to play a lot of Violent, so they played 4, and overall, the average player played 3. But Warhorse is another big winner from Arthurian Legends. It's 2 mana, just like Blink, and it moves something. So that 2 mana move something is a floor, but instead of drawing a card, you get board presence. You get a 2/2. So if you just play this on curve and attack for 2 on 2, you're really happy there. So I think Warhorse is a really, really good card. Firebolt, just really efficient removal and just be able to deal with a 3/3 is really strong. Like down here, I think two decks played, or only one deck played because we have a total count of four and an average of four. So that means only one deck had Firebolt in it. But Firebolt is still a very strong card. Morgan Le Fay is the most efficient card draw we have. 3 mana, draw three. Previously, it was Grandmaster Wizard. It was 6 mana, draw three. So you're paying 1 mana for a card instead of two. So it makes a lot of sense to see this up here at the top. Jihad at 25% versus 12%. That's just one deck made it into the top 8 with Jihad. It's really about the same. And then here, Boudica didn't make it to the top 8, but I think this is a example, like I said before, of aggro not being as strong as a lot of people felt like it was. A lot of people are good at playing around aggro and slowing them down. So Boudica is a great card, but it's a aggro card and a kind of more of a payoff. You're already kind of winning the race. Yes, you can deal, if you have 2 minions on board, you can deal an extra 6 damage. But also, if you have too many minions on boards that are attacking uncontested, you're probably already winning this game. And Boudica just kind of feels like a win more card in my mind. And then moving on here to water, Atlantean Fate is still one of the best things you can be doing. This 12% here is, there's only one deck playing water, and that was the winning list. But he played Atlantean Fate, and Lugboard Cat is a great efficient minion. Polymorph is paired with Battle Mage is just a cantrip that draws you a card and kills a thing. So it's a 2-for-1 almost. Riptide is great movement for either Mariner's Curse or some kind of control. Shrink's doing the same thing of removing a card or removing a minion and then attacking it. Surveying. This is a good example of Arthurian Legends did add a lot to water. You can see here the Dame, Ribble Bogart. These are really good water cards. Black Knight, Lead Astray. They saw some play, but if you look at the old lists of water being played, it was Atlantean Fate, Rule or Thule, and that's really all you got, unless you're doing the Polymorph Shrink combo stuff. But I think Arthurian Legends did help water, but I don't know if it helped enough. All right, and then moving on to artifacts. To no one's surprise, Ring of Morrigan was the best thing you could be doing with an artifact. Ring of Morrigan is just the best card in the set for Arthurian Legends and probably the game at this point. Philosopher's Stone is still up here as a very popular card. Orb of Ball Beareth in top 8 just because of the 3 Archmagio builds. Trinket is still some of the best stuff you can be doing for 1 mana. It's 1 extra damage a turn. It makes things trade profitably. Angel's Eggs are up here in the top 8 with 1 deck playing them. Kind of they were popular in the general play field, but an average played of 1. The cores are still very popular in the general play field, but if you look over here on the right side, you have 1 core, Ruby core here, and cores are just like, if you top deck it late game and you're not playing sorcerer, so it's like that's your card for turn, and when you need a minion, even just a 3/3 or a 4/4, just some kind of board presence is much more important turn 5, 6, and 7 than another core. So I think that's why we see cores not doing so well in the top 8. Like, you have Amethyst core up here, 1 deck played it, but cores are good, but they're not the end all be all. Oh, an interesting one here is the Amulet of Nynaeve. I don't think any amulets made it to the top 8, but is another strong 1 mana artifact. I just think Philosopher's Stone or Ring of Morrigan is just better for 1 mana. Maybe there's some. It's hard because the amulet asks you to play preemptively to your opponent, but they can still bury it with like Earthquake or do shenanigans to it. It doesn't make it invulnerable or like uninteractable. It's a fine card, but I think your opponent has still ways to play around it, which is kind of sucks. For Wanderers, there's about 12% and 11%. So I guess one deck would make sense of making it to the top 8. Just a Rock here, the card that was gonna just make Philosopher's Stones and rings and all the crazy artifacts just absolutely useless. None of them made it to top 8. Just a Rock is a fine card, it's still 1 for 1, and if you common sense for it, you're 2 for 1 yourself. All right, and then sites. The towers are still the best sites. They are better than Beacon because they're guaranteed to. Gothic, Dark, and Lone are some of the strongest sites in the game for sure. Arthurian Legends is trying to get up there with Valley of Delight being one of the most popular cards. It goes in almost any deck unless you're monocolor. Even 2 colors can make use of this just to fix and smooth out mana, or sorry, thresholds. Wizard's Den in the top 8. Wizard's Den draws you a card, and then Archmagio doesn't mind discarding a card later in the game because maybe it's a third of a card they gain or don't lose. And Wizard's Den, you can also play it off to the side for your turn 3 or 4 and draw a card. Wizard's Den is so good. It's all the way down here. Yeah. So 60% of top 8, so over half, played Wizard's Den, while only 20% of the general population played Wizard's Den. Wizard's Den is a good card. Play more Wizard's Den. The discard isn't bad. You just, because even if they attack it on turn 5 or maybe 6 or 7, you're now in top deck mode and you're playing a card, so you're not going to have a card to discard. Wizard's Den is just card draw. It's just generic card draw. You get a card. Like, the best thing you can do in a lot of card games is draw cards, right? So Wizard's Den made it 62 versus 20%. And then with the showing of Archmagio, Funeral Pyre is going to be a huge card, I think. And now it's already being played a lot, but I think it's just need to be called out. Funeral Pyre is great against Archmagio. And here we'll take a look at the final thing of avatars. The most popular avatars overall was Sorcerer at 20%, and top 8 was Archmagio at 40%. Now, I think one Sorcerer made it to top 8. Yep. Battle Mage being 9% versus the 1, but Sorcerer, Battle Mage, Archmagio, Druid. Druid, I thought people would be doing really well with, but maybe the 5 mana for drums or what have you is just a little too much for like a Battle Mage aggressive list or Avatar of Air, who just you die before turn 5, or if you don't have it on turn 5, you have it on turn 7, but it's just a little too slow to get that combo. But Druid is still very good with Tawny and the extra value you get just from having a 1/1 disposable airborne thing, which was another popular one with only one making it to the top 8. But yeah, Pathfinder 3%. Avatar of Earth, there's 2 Avatar of Earth out there, a couple Seers still, but Templar, there was a couple Templars. Templar is a really fun deck, but you're going to lose to Threshold a lot of the time, so maybe an Elementalist list would be better for Templar Knights and stuff, but who knows. I'm sure we'll see more of that, especially coming into the League stuff. We'll see what kind of lists evolve out of Templar, Battle Mage, or Archmagio. All right, and thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really happy to be doing stats again. I've got a really cool script that just grabs things and it spits these out really fast, so hopefully I can turn these around pretty quick. But thank you, everybody. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll talk to you later.